Massive explosion in central Paris. 36 people have been injured in what authorities suspect is a gas explosion. 200 firefighters have been mobilised as police close off streets in the centre of Paris. Meanwhile, the 9th weekend of Yellow Vest protests gets underway here in the capital. Police fear today's demonstrations will be larger and more violent than last Saturday's as its leaders try to inject new life into the movement. And political gridlock in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The outgoing president's coalition wins a majority of parliamentary seats despite coming third in the run at the top job. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us this hour here in the France 24 newsroom. We begin for you here in Paris, where 36 people have been injured following a huge explosion at a bakery in the centre of the city. 12 of them are reported to be in a critical condition today. Police say the cause is likely to be a gas leak, and the blast was so large that it rocked buildings hundreds of metres away. Now, this all occurred in the 9th district of Paris, in the heart of the city's busy shopping neighbourhood. A bit earlier on, I spoke to our reporter Clovis Casali, who was at the scene. He told us the Prime Minister had been there to survey the damage.
Well, as you can see behind me, the whole area is cordoned off with heavy police presence and, of course, the much-needed rescue forces who are trying to help those injured in this blast. We've seen people injured being rushed to nearby hospitals. It appears that the blast occurred shortly before 9 o'clock in a boulangerie, in a bakery here in the 9th arrondissement, in the heart of the French capital. You already had firemen on the site trying to deal with a gas leak, and that's when the blast happened. Paris authorities have just briefed us with the latest information. 12 people are in critical condition. At least 5 are battling for their lives as we speak. A very alarming and dramatic situation. Those were the words of the Paris authorities. Notably, one fireman who was stuck under the debris for several long minutes before being saved by his colleagues, by his comrades. That fireman currently battling for his life. So shortly after the blast, the Interior Minister, Christophe Castaner, as well as the Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, came here to see the situation and try to bring comfort to those that they met. The explosion was felt in the streets nearby. We spoke to several witnesses who told us that they had the feeling, they thought it was an earthquake. At the time, they were extremely frightened. They left their homes. They gathered in the streets, and now they don't know when they'll be able to go back to their homes as the whole area is cordoned off.
Staying with developments then here in Paris, Yellow Vest protesters are back in the streets today for the 9th consecutive week of rallies. After a subdued Christmas season, organisers are hoping to inject new life into the protest movement, and police fear today's march will be bigger and more violent than last weekend's. Protests, though, are ongoing not just here in Paris but across France, as Wassim Cornet now reports.
These Yellow Vests have been protesting on this road southeast of Paris since November 17th. Like Nathalie, who struggles to make ends meet, they won't be traveling to the capital to demonstrate.
I hope the president will give in. We're getting tired, but we won't give up. And I won't travel to Paris. I'd rather stay here.
It's a similar state of mind here in Sens. These Yellow Vests are adamant they will not leave the roundabout they've occupied for several weeks. They've even renamed it the Gallic Roundabout.
Only police will be able to make us move. But if we leave, we'll just come back the next day.
2 months after the movement began, the Yellow Vests have lost little in the way of determination.
No, it's not over. As long as there's nothing on the table, as long as our elected officials don't listen, the movement will continue to grow.
French President Emmanuel Macron has called for a national debate on voters' grievances, which will begin next week. Many Yellow Vests, though, appear unfazed by the process and are continuing to demand Macron's resignation or an immediate referendum on his presidency.
Let's go to the Democratic Republic of Congo for you now, where the coalition of outgoing President Joseph Kabila has won a majority in parliament. This despite their candidate losing out in the run at the top job. Now, according to Electoral Commission figures, the opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi picked up the most votes in the presidential election, but his win is already being contested heavily by other opposition figures. Cole Stangler and Catherine Viette have more.
President-elect of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, will likely be without a majority in parliament. That's according to partial results of the country's legislative elections. Parties allied to outgoing President Joseph Kabila are slated to win at least 261 of the 500 seats up for grabs in the National Assembly. In doing so, they'll conserve their absolute majority. Under the DRC's semi-presidential system, the prime minister must be backed by a majority in parliament. That means Tshisekedi's running mate, Vital Kamerhe, will likely not be at the head of the new government. If the current results hold, the arrangement known as cohabitation will significantly limit the new president's ability to advance his agenda. After coming in second place, presidential candidate Martin Fayulu still claims victory with 61% of the vote. The opposition figure has alleged fraud and accused Tshisekedi of making a deal with Kabila. This Saturday, Fayulu is making an appeal to the Constitutional Court, seeking a recount.
Next, the US government's shutdown is now the longest in American history, hitting 22 days running this Saturday. And there is no end in sight to the stalemate between the White House and the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives over the funding of Donald Trump's border wall. The president has demanded $5.6 billion for its construction, a figure Democrats say is simply out of the question. Well, Trump had suggested he could find that money by bypassing Congress and declaring a national emergency, but on Friday, he did appear to soften his position. Take a listen.
No, I said I could do it, but I'll tell you what. It's the easy way out, but Congress should do this. This is too simple. It's too basic. And Congress should do this. If they can't do it, if at some point they just can't do it, this is a 15-minute meeting. If they can't do it, I will declare a national emergency. I have the absolute right to do it.
Well, covering this story for us is our Washington correspondent, Philip Crowther. He has a little more now then on why this shutdown has lasted so long.
The reason why this is now officially the longest government shutdown in the history of the United States are a few decisions that were taken before the end of this week by the White House and by the U.S. Congress. From U.S. President Donald Trump, the decision not to declare a national emergency, which actually came as a surprise to many because we know that the White House has been preparing the groundwork for that extraordinary step and very controversial step that the president can still take. With that decision out of the way, there was no chance that this government shutdown was going to come to an end because that decision would have had to come from Congress. But it turns out that the Senate had already left for the weekend and the House of Representatives pretty quickly followed suit. So this means that those 800,000 or so federal employees who have been furloughed, well, they are still not going to work, and chances are that they won't be back at work on Monday. This is a government shutdown. Now that it has reached that record position, could go on longer and longer still. The president certainly says that he wants a decision to come from Congress, negotiations maybe to work out with Congress before he would take the step to declare a national emergency. But right now, and this has been the case for quite a few days now, all negotiations between Democrats in the U.S. Congress and the Republican in the White House have stalled completely. There haven't even been any meetings between the two parties. So it does look like the stalemate will be going on for quite some time still.
You are now then up to speed with all the headlines here on France 24. Don't go away. Much more still to come after this.